I suppose most of our listeners know that Javier Milei, who was elected president 4 or 5 months ago, is a declared anarcho-capitalist. In other words, he's a very hardline libertarian, and he was elected making a very big deal out of the fact that he wants to get rid of almost all of the government. Well, the whole thing, frankly. But and he won by a huge majority. Not only by a huge majority, but weighted towards the young people in the country. So what's happening in Argentina now is a very big deal.
You're listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, where you get valuable information you just can't find anywhere else. To thrive in today's trying times, you need the Financial Survival Network, now more than ever. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and get your free newsletter and gift. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.
And welcome. You are listening to and watching the Financial Survival Network. I'm your host, Kerry Lutz. Old friend of the show is back with us now from points down south, Doug Casey. Doug, been talking to you now since 2011 when I started my podcast, and you got a podcast now on iTunes and hey, YouTube and on iTunes. I've seen it there, and it's great to have you back on the show. Hey, want to get your perspective on the revolution that's taking place in Argentina and whether it's hope for America or not, that we can somehow reverse our course.
Well, I spend a lot of time in Argentina every year, although I'm back across the Mighty Plate River and I'm in Uruguay at the moment. I've got a farm here, and it's very nice to be on the farm as opposed to in the city. But what's happening in Argentina is of world historic importance. It's a very, very big deal. I suppose most of our listeners know that Javier Milei, who was elected president 4 or 5 months ago, is a declared anarcho-capitalist. In other words, he's a very hardline libertarian, and he was elected making a very big deal out of the fact that he wants to get rid of almost all of the government. Well, the whole thing, frankly. But and he won by a huge majority. Not only by a huge majority, but weighted towards the young people in the country. So what's happening in Argentina now is a very big deal. It's world historic importance. It's unique. And just a few more words on this is that what you hear about Milei in the popular press is almost entirely negative, because the press is captured, it's populated all over the world by hardcore leftists. So if there's anything that they can misinterpret or anything they can say that's nasty about Milei, they'll do so. But he's a great guy.
Hey, so how did this happen? Because, all right, let's assume that there really is a ruling cabal in the world, a conspiracy, whether it's Illuminati, whatever you want to call them. Let's say that, assume that they run the world, okay? How did they let this guy slip in through the cracks?
Well, I'm not sure that there really is a cabal that's able to run the whole world, although I'm sure there's some people that try. But what happened? Look, Argentina 100 years ago was one of the 3 or 4 most prosperous countries in the world. And how could they have blown it? It's the 7th largest country in the world. Doesn't have a large population, only 40, maybe 45 million people.
The best steak. Definitely the best steak in the world, right? Some of the best steak.
Oh, this country is an agricultural powerhouse. It's just full of cows.
And wine. And the best wine, right?
Some of the best wine. And no, it's absolutely, it's a great place to live. It really is. I mean, I've been to 155 countries or so, and I've lived in 10. And Argentina's absolutely one of my favorites. It's why I came down here. Well, the first time I came down here was when? About 1980, so a long time. But I basically kind of moved down here in 2007, and it's treated me very well. I bought a lot of real estate. And incidentally, since we're basically a financial show here, I've got to point out that Argentina still has fantastic bargains in property.
I'm seriously going to come down and look.
Oh, no, you won't believe the values. They're tremendous. Like my apartment in BA, I bought it in 2007. It's 5,000 square feet. It's a 2-story penthouse in a great building with only 5 other apartments. And it's in the best part of town. And at that time, I paid $950,000 for it. If I was going to replace that apartment at that time on the Upper East Side of New York, which is the equivalent of where I am in BA, it would have cost $20 million, or more. Now, today, prices are in flux because of the changes that Milei is making.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, everything's gone higher with the inflation of the dollar. I mean, the dollar is worth half what it was back in 2007. But I don't know, still, what I could get for that place would be less than 10% of what I'd pay if I wanted to replace it on the Upper East Side of New York. Mm-hmm. And I think an argument can be made that at some point, that apartment in Buenos Aires will be worth more than its equivalent in New York.
All right. So
that's the way things are going.
Somebody like me who lives in Florida don't want to live in the midst of a big metropolis, kind of like smaller cities, but like the water. Where would be a good place for me to look?
Well, the water. Well, we think about the water down in Argentina. We really think in terms of going across the Plate River. It's a very wide river, a 100-mile wide mouth as it goes into the ocean. And you might want to look at Uruguay. And Uruguay is more like Argentina than Argentina is in many ways. But, things are more expensive here in Uruguay. But let's say you don't want to be a real farmer. You just want to have a big backyard.
Yeah.
20, 30 acres, that type of thing, so that you're not chock-a-block with the neighbors. Nice house on a river or close to the beach. Here in Uruguay, maybe $1.5 million.
Interesting. Well, that's certainly a bargain compared to what's going on here. So let's talk about the U.S. Do you think Trump can learn from his mistakes? And if he happens to become president, number 47, and I kind of see the parallels with Grover Cleveland, you think he could go the libertarian route like Milei did? Do you think he's just basically got nothing to lose and just goes for it?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Kerry. The problem with Trump, I wrote an article about him for internationalman.com, which is my blog. It's a daily blog where I analyzed the good things and the bad things about Trump. And the worst thing about Trump, the problem I have with Trump, is that he doesn't have any philosophical core. Back then, in 2012, when he was first talking about running for president, he said that I could run either as a Democrat or a Republican, which, doesn't really, I'm not crazy about either the Democrats or the Republicans, to be honest. I'm a libertarian. I'm an anarcho-capitalist, like Milei is. And I could tell you how my relation to Milei in that regard. But getting back to Trump, God, other than not having a philosophical core, he is a commonsensical guy. He does have a real background in business. He's learned who his enemies are. The last 10 years. That's a plus. I don't think he'll surround himself with the kind of incompetence and and scorpions and snakes that he did when he was elected in 2016. So the problem is, Kerry, I don't think that even though I think he'll win the popular election for lots of reasons, I'm not sure that he'll be installed as the president. I think that the Democrats will find a way to keep themselves in office. I know that's a shocking thing to say, but I'll tell you why I say it. It's that all over across the U.S., the Democrats are trying to go to mail-in voting, which makes it impossible to know who's really sending in that ballot. That's a big problem. We have lots of electronic voting machines, and I know the Republicans are going to be on the lookout for computer fraud with the electronic voting machines, but there's still a problem. I'm a great believer in paper voting, as primitive as that may be.
Yeah.
And the people that are in charge of Washington now are actually Jacobins. They're the same types that ran France after the revolution in 1789. They have the same views, the same psychology, the same philosophy. And now that they're in office, and they've been cementing themselves in office by hiring more ultra-lefties, they're not going to want to let go. So the only thing I'm sure about, and I'm pretty sure about this, is that come November, we're going to have something like chaos in the U.S.
Yeah.
I mean, you tell me, you're in Florida right now. It seems to me the red people, the Trumpers or the Republicans, and the blue people, the Democrats, they hate each other. They cannot get along. They can't even have a civil conversation once they stop talking about the weather and baseball. And forget about the weather, because that's another thing. This whole global warming.
Always hot. To some extent, that's true. But, I think the hate's more on the blue side than the red. I mean,
it is. It is.
We don't like, and I don't consider myself red. I'm libertarian. But, shall we say, the non-interventionalist side, it's just, hey, have your beliefs. Your beliefs will be proven to be false. And then you're going to have to either stick with your false beliefs, or you'll have to change them, right? But it hasn't really happened yet, has it? But I see hope. I see hope where I see blacks leaving the Democrat plantation, as they call it. Not my term, theirs. And it's a trend that's happening. And but if you liken the left to a wounded animal, this could well be their first opening wound, and that's when they get extremely dangerous, right?
Yeah, it's true. And I think you're right about a lot of blacks getting off the plantation. Like, look at Tyrus, who I first discovered on the Greg Gutfeld show. I mean, he's a solid thinker. I mean, he's a good guy generally. And there are a lot of guys like him now that are coming across, that are on our side of the barricades. But, the Democrats, they really are full of hate. And they've captured lots of areas of the U.S. They've captured academia for sure.
Oh, yeah.
It's evidenced by what's going on in all the colleges.
It's hopeless.
All the professors are Marxists and hardcore leftists. I mean, if you're not, you can't survive in an atmosphere like there is in the big Ivy League schools, certainly. So they've captured that. They've captured Hollywood and the entertainment industry. They control all levels of government, basically. It's not just academia. They've captured the school system all the way down to grade school.
And the media.
The media, totally, indoctrinating people. So I'm not optimistic. I'm afraid that even though the Republicans will win the vote, that the Democrats will stay installed in office. And I wouldn't put it past them to get the U.S. really involved with this war in the Ukraine, or maybe something with Israel and Gaza, Hamas, Hezbollah, God knows what, or some other place, because it's been said that war is the health of the state. And when things are going badly domestically, it's helpful to distract people with a foreign enemy. So if I was in Vegas, we were in Vegas, and I had to place a bet on the winner, I hate to say it, but I think the Democrats are going to win in November.
Yeah, well, it's not who votes, it's who counts the votes, as we say. So
that's right.
So gold and silver, you and I have been talking about it since we started speaking, since we started our dialogue here. And now 2,400 plus. I haven't even looked at it today.
I hit 2450 today, I think.
Yeah. And so what's... and silver is $32 and no end in sight here, right?
I don't think so, because it's true that gold has hit a new nominal high in dollars, but in real terms, no, not really, because it hit $850 an ounce back in 1980, but the dollar today is worth
a third.
Well, depends on how much we trust the figures. But
who knows?
Yeah, who really knows? I trust the figures the U.S. government turns out only marginally more than I trusted those that the Argentine government was turning out when
or China
were novels. So
or China.
I think in order to get back to its previous high,
3,000,
at least 3,000. But the world situation is so much more serious now. And the amount of money creation is so much more serious now than it was back then. That and there's so many more dollars that have been exported over the years. I mean, many trillions of dollars are outside the U.S. and they're hot potatoes. No, I mean, gold could go hyperbolic, much higher. So, yeah, I'm a gold bull. Still am. We were gold bulls then, but hey, now the game is really afoot.
Yeah, the game is afoot, and where it stops, nobody knows. Because, hey, just like they started with inflation, it's transitory. Now it's sticky. The next step is it's permanent, right?
Well, it is permanent. And the reason it's permanent is because the cause of inflation, and this bears repeating, Kerry, I mean, we say it all the time.
Yep.
It's a monetary phenomenon. It's not the fault of the oil companies or the farmers, or it's the fault of the people printing up money. And the government is spending money like a drunken sailor, and they need
to don't insult drunken sailors like that.
You're right. Drunken sailors are fun, and these creeps in the government are no fun at all. Yeah. But they've got to print up a couple $1 trillion a year in order to fund the government spending, and that's exactly what they're doing. Mm-hmm. So all that money flows into the economy, and it flows first to the corporations that are wired with the government.
Right. They're the initial beneficiaries, the banks, the hedge funds, all of them, right?
Yep, they get it first. And that bulls the stock market higher as a benefit. And all that money, once it gets into society, well, it's got to go someplace. So people hide in stocks. So I'm not making a prediction for a stock market collapse. A bond market collapse, yes. Interest rates are going higher, but stocks can keep going higher for the reason. But it's going to be a disaster for the average guy and for the general economy, regardless of what happens to the price of stocks in general. Although I'm not long stocks, I'm basically long resource stocks at this point. Companies that mine gold and copper and silver and uranium and all the rest of it.
What about oil, energy stocks too?
Very much. Energy is still very cheap. From a historical point of view, if we look at the real bull market in energy stocks, it was back in 1980. That's a long time ago already. And at that time, energy and energy-related stocks were about almost 25% of the S&P 500. Today, even after they've come up a bit recently, I think we're only looking at around 5%. Because the big fund managers, the BlackRocks, the Goldmans, the Fidelities, they're very averse to owning energy stocks. Forget about mining stocks. That's totally, they can't even talk about them. But even oil stocks, they're averse to owning them because of this carbon hysteria. We've got to go green. We can't rape the earth. We can't mine stuff. We can't drill for oil or gas or anything like that. And the people that run energy stocks generally, just because of their backgrounds, tend to be non-DEI, non-ESG people.
Right.
So no, these big institutions which control the markets are averse to buying oil and gas stocks, which means they're very cheap. I mean, there are still oil and gas stocks that are yielding 8, 10% or more in current dividends. Mm-hmm. And I think oil's going higher. And so is natural gas, and those dividends are going up. So, yeah, I own a lot of those too.
Yep. I'm inclined to agree with you. So there's still opportunity out there, but we got chaos ahead. When we have this conversation in a year, what do you think will have happened?
Well, the cheapest area of the market is still mining stocks. I mean, oil and gas stocks are very cheap, but what's really cheap are the miners. And I think that since there's such a teeny weeny portion of the market, they're just a rounding error at this point. They're not even small caps. They're not even micro caps. They're nano caps. Some are pico caps. At some point, the market is going to flow back into them, at least if you want copper, so that when you flip the switch on the wall, your light goes on, or you drive your electric car. It's questionable whether you want one. We can talk about that too. But that it works. They're very, very cheap at this point. And so I'm loaded up with them. I like things that have low market caps because they tend to be volatile. And mining itself is a crappy 19th century choo-choo train industry. So, as a business, it's not a great business. They say, hey, it's like finding a gold mine. No, that'll ruin your life if you find a gold mine for reasons that I'm happy to explain. But on the bright side, these the market caps of these stocks are so small that you just have to blow on them and they double. And the whole group, as shocking as this is to say, could go 10 to 1 over the next year or two. It's not a prediction, but it's a real possibility, and it'll happen eventually.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. I think you're right. I think that's where it's at, and that's where I've kind of staked my future. Hey, Doug, it's been great having you on. Just tell us where we find you again these days.
Well, we have I do an article once a week, and we have other great guys that do articles at internationalman.com. It's free. Great articles there on all kinds of stuff. And my podcast is Doug Casey's Take on YouTube and Rumble. But I've got to, as an author, have to plug my novels.
Oh, yes. We didn't even talk about them this time, but we'll have you on again. Tell us the latest.
Well, the latest should be out the next time we talk. Got my fingers crossed. It's called Terrorist. First one was Speculator. Second was Drug Lord.
Right.
It was a lesson because we're tracing the history of our hero, Charles Knight, who is reforming the reputations of these unjustly besmirched occupations. So you're a good guy doing these things. And now he's going to be accused of being a terrorist. And it's going to be a book.
I love the first two, and this one sounds even better if that's possible here. And hey, in any event, we'll put links in the show notes to your prior books, which I believe are found on Amazon and wherever fine books used to be sold. And we'll put your International Man link in there as well. We appreciate, as always, your coming on. If you got a question for Doug or myself, shoot me an email. Hey, questions about Argentina, where you think that's heading, love to hear about it. And any questions, comments, KL@kerrylutz.com. Make sure when you go to the site, you sign up for our free newsletter. Doug, it's always a pleasure, and it's great to catch up with you.
Likewise, Kerry.
Thanks for listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, your solution to today's trying times. For the latest, go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.